Before we begin, I would just like to say a massive thank you for joining the conversation. Everything I share on Atlas comes from my own experiences, observations, research, and my personal opinions. While I will always aim to provide accurate and helpful information, nothing discussed here should be taken as medical, psychological, financial, or any other type of professional advice. If you are experiencing crisis, please do reach out to a qualified professional or seek your local emergency services. Now, let's begin.
So what is health? What do you think of first when I say about working on building a healthier you? I bet for many of you, the first thing that will come to mind will be either exercising more or eating healthier, which obviously forms a huge part of your health. But is that everything? What about, for example, when you're feeling very stressed and struggling to cope with pressures in your day-to-day life? Is that part of your health? Is diet and exercise alone what would fix that issue? So there's a lot more to your health than just the physical side, even though it obviously is part of it. And when we start understanding the different aspects of what makes you healthy, we start also appreciating on how to look at causes rather than symptoms of different challenges and issues. Let's stick with the example of stress. If you were just to take it head on, you'd probably be thinking like, I just need to take some time out and get some rest. But in reality, are you always able to just take some time out to recover, to manage your stress levels, to relax? Is that a viable solution for you, and will that fix the issue? Perhaps for some of you. But if we look into it a bit more, I believe there's more underlying issues. If you're feeling stressed regularly, it may mean that you've not built the coping mechanisms to deal with these outside stressors. And that's where building this emotion regulation is important, building these habits on how to handle stress, building resilience towards stress to be able to withstand certain stressors. And that's what I want to look at today, is the 5 key pillars that I've identified that make up a holistic view on your health, as well as how they interact and affect one another, and how you can use awareness within these areas to improve your overall health. So let's get into it. First, let's look at activity. So this is probably, as mentioned, the more obvious one that most of us will think first when we talk about health. So what is activity, and what do I mean here? Under activity, I include everything that goes around your physical movement, activity, exercise, as well as diet and recovery and rest. So why is it so important? Well, firstly, there's so many good sayings that very clearly describes the importance of activity, one being move it or lose it. Your body constantly responds to what you do. And the more you move, the more you exercise, the stronger, the more resilient it then becomes. However, if on the flip side, you stop moving, become very sedentary, your body takes it as a sign that it doesn't need to move anymore. So it will preserve its energy and slowly start breaking down, slowly start getting slower, weaker. And we want to obviously avoid it and be as active as we possibly can, so that the older we get, the less we lose this ability to move and do things we enjoy. We only get one body, so we need to look after it. And when you go through exercise, it helps in so many other areas of your life. We spoke a moment ago about stress. Reality is, exercise actually does help with stress in two ways. One is exercise is a way of putting managed stress on your body. So the more it goes through this, the more it builds resilience to stress. Not just the physical stress of exercising, but also the mental stress. But in addition to that, exercise has also proved to be a good way to release stress that may have been pent up during the day or during the week. So it manages stress both by building resilience as well as releasing the stress you have. But exercise alone won't do it. You also need then the fuel and the materials to rebuild that body. Because whenever you're active, your body do so-called micro tears, go through micro tears and breaks it down a little bit. So the way it builds itself up is by using the materials you give it to build a stronger version afterwards. So what you eat, your diet, directly impacts its ability to rebuild. However, another thing to consider is your rest and recovery, because your body can't be rebuilding while it's tearing itself down. So the time where your body actually becomes stronger is when it's recovering, and that is during your sleep. So it is very vital to prioritize your sleep because it both helps rebuild your mental, cognitive performance as well as your physical body and your physical capabilities then to take on the next day. So as you can see, your physical body and what you do with it directly impacts most other areas in your life. So you need to make sure that you look after it. Next, let's talk about regulation. So when I talk about emotional regulation, many of you may naturally think about how we respond to the negatives in our life, to the stress, the anxiety, anger, and it's obviously a big part of it. However, when we talk about emotional regulation, I also want to include how we respond to the highs. Many of us might have periods in life when things go great. We feel energized, enthusiastic, happy. And we start to believe that life will always be that way. But reality is, life comes in seasons and has ups and downs. So emotional regulation is not trying to avoid either of them, but it's about building the resilience so you don't get controlled by them. And that's where building strong habits and structures in life become very important, because when life inevitably knocks you down, you can respond with focus rather than panic. There's a great saying that life is not what happens to you, but how you perceive it and react to it. And there's that same thinking I want to apply here. It's not about trying to control the world around you, because frankly it's impossible. But it's about learning to navigate how you perceive it and then how you choose to respond to the life. The next pillar I want to address is mind. I believe that this is often the most overlooked aspect of our health. Many people will think about improving their physical health, but few consider their brain health. I like to think about it this way. Your body is the vehicle that carries you through life, but your brain is what allows you to drive it. You may have the best car in the world, but if you don't know how to drive it or lose the ability to, it makes the car almost useless. And the same applies in life. Your brain, your mind, it allows you to think, to make decisions, to problem solve. It guides everything that you do in life. And same way that a muscle loses its strength if you don't use it, same applies to your brain. It also benefits from being challenged. So you should always continue to learn, whether it's learning new skills, new languages, pushing yourself at work and taking on more responsibilities, or perhaps putting yourself outside of your normal social circle. In most cases, growth starts just outside of your comfort zone, and that's what you should be seeking out. Something I've noticed in many people is that it's not the physical decline that limits people's lives later in their lives, but it's their mind not being as sharp anymore. And it's not just about limiting the decline with years. It's also being able to make most of the present, the time now, maximizing what you are able to do. So it's very important to prioritize and look after your brain health. The fourth pillar I want to address is order. Contrary to what you may potentially think, I'm a strong believer that structure gives you more freedom. And let me explain why. Without structure, my mind is constantly juggling a lot of different priorities in life, from family, work, finances, my health, hobbies. It's a lot to keep on your mind. However, when you've got structure and dedicated time in the week, when you take care of each of those things, then the rest of the time, you don't have to worry about when you'll take care of those things. You can actually be present and enjoy your time more. And structure is not about having every minute of every day mapped out, knowing what you'll be doing. But it's simply about having dedicated time for the important things in your life, so that you can then enjoy your time when you're doing anything else. The final pillar I want to address is relationships. There's a lot of modern thinking that you need to be self-sufficient. You need to take ownership of where you are and where your life is going. You need to be able to take care of everything by yourself. But it's not necessarily the case. There's a great old saying that it takes a village to raise a child. And there's many things you can take from this saying. One is obviously that as you're growing up, there's a lot of different points of influence that shapes the type of person you grow up to be. But what it also tells us is that in the case of parents, there's stages in life where you need support, where you need others. And then from the perspective of the village, there's also times in life where you need to be the person who's reaching out, who's providing this support and providing this help. I 100% agree that we are responsible for where our lives are and the direction that we go into. However, it is not the same as having to navigate that life by ourselves. There's times in life when we need support, when we need help, and we need to be able to recognize when these times are and be able to reach out to the people closest to us for this support. It's not a weakness to ask for help. It's just the way humans have evolved to live. As you can see, there's more than just one area to consider when you're looking to build the healthiest, strongest version of yourself. Most people don't intentionally neglect any specific areas. Often it becomes because they don't understand how interconnected all of these areas are. It's like when you're building a house, you can't build a house with one strong wall. Each wall carries the structure, and if one wall becomes weak or is missing, it starts putting the pressure on the other walls. And it's the same in life. And it's not about building perfection across each area, but it's about building awareness, understanding of which areas you're strongest in, which areas you're struggling in, and which areas need more of your attention. Throughout this season, we'll be looking at how to assess how strong you are in each area and the steps you can take to make small, gradual, practical improvements in each of the different areas. Join me next week when we will be looking at the identity crisis in modern men.